Hi, it's Michael and Anthony here presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for the current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, with Anthony Turner from the Small Business Mentoring Service, we'll interview a different small business expert or a fellow business owner and get them to share their best tips and insights for you, the listeners. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. Thanks also to our supporters, Kerr Capital and the Small Business Mentoring Service. So welcome to another edition of Small Business Banter Radio. In today, Blake Hutchison, who is the CEO and leads a team at Flipper, and he's going to tell you what Flipper does. He's had a very interesting professional career with a significant focus on small business, digital. He can chat about that in today also. So welcome, Blake, firstly.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the opportunity. It's great to chat.
And with me today, Anthony Turner, co-host from Small Business Mentoring Service. Morning, Anthony.
Hi, Michael. Good to be with everybody again.
Thank you. All right, Blake, let's rip into it. I've tracked Flipper for some time. Do you want to, before we move on, just tell the listeners what Flipper is and then give us a little bit about your personal and professional background leading up to being CEO of Flipper?
Yeah, no problem. So Flipper is a marketplace to buy and sell digital assets or digital real estate. So that's defined as e-commerce businesses, content sites like blogs, businesses backed by Amazon, so fulfilled by Amazon stores, Amazon associates, content sites, apps. So things that you get your mobile phone out. There's a bunch of apps that people have on their phones and you can trade those on Flipper. So think about it as real estate, but it's digital real estate. It's an asset that people use and they can buy and sell those assets on our platform.
Excellent. And then before you took over, it's maybe 2 or 3 years ago as CEO of Flipper, you can give us a little bit about your background prior to that?
Yeah, no problem. So many of your listeners will probably be familiar with the two brands that I was at prior to Flipper. The first one was Luxury Escapes. So I was running that business for the founder here in Melbourne. So Luxury Escapes, as I said, hopefully many of your listeners have heard of that business. It's a wonderful business, probably having a slightly tough time of it during COVID-19, but they were selling luxury packaged holidays at a great price. And I had the fortunate opportunity of running that business on behalf of the founder there, leading a great team, saw that business through momentous growth, which was really, really exciting. Prior to that, and again, no doubt many of your listeners are familiar with the brand, I was at Xero. So Xero is small business accounting software in the cloud. And many of the listeners will be familiar with that. Great business, fast growth business out of New Zealand, but very, very big foothold here in Australia and loved by its customers. So I had the strong fortune of representing two great brands. Before that, I was running my own business and also in the USA for 6 years.
So you very much relate to the journey, overused word, that owners go through from starting something to running it successfully, perhaps exiting it. You're talking about digital real estate, and that's what we want to really sort of hone in on. Digital's front of mind for, if not being actioned by business owners, they're hearing it. You know what they need to do to keep up. And can you talk a little bit more about where business is generally and how important it is to be digitally up to speed?
Yeah, so I'll state the obvious first, which is to say that anyone without a digital presence today is really limiting their opportunity. And that's just because it's the way that consumers, either business or end consumers, individuals, will now first engage with a brand. And more often than not, it's their pathway to choosing a business. So be that the local cafe all the way through to the local landscape architect, all the way through to an Etsy shop selling handmade furniture. So you have to be online. That's the first statement, and I think most people are now aware of that. Probably the second thing is that digital is now more accessible than ever before to consumers, and it's also a lot easier than ever before for first-time digital entrepreneurs to either get started or to accelerate growth in their business through a first-time digital presence. And that's because everyone from Google to Facebook to Amazon to Etsy to YouTube to WooCommerce to WordPress, and the list goes on, have made these platforms readily accessible at a good price.
I guess one of the things that probably as a business owner or past business owner myself, I probably wasn't as aware as I probably needed to be about the value of my digital presence and how to actually put that into dollars and or create a value around that. Maybe you could give the listeners some ideas about how they should be thinking about their digital footprint and how that may be commercialized as an asset in the future.
Yeah, so I can give a couple of examples. Perhaps a good example would be where a offline, so a traditional brick and mortar or services business acquires a small digital asset to complement their user acquisition, so acquiring new customers. And that the example there might be, let me use a real life example right now. There is an asset on Flipper which is called Tattooing 101. Now that's a website, and it's about tattooing patterns, artwork. I must admit, I'm not so au fait with the topic myself, but it's all of the detail you would want to know about tattooing. Now, that site receives lots of organic search traffic, and that's because it's well optimized for keywords. Now, if you are a tattoo parlor, a brick and mortar tattoo parlor, let's say, and I'm making it up, maybe you are maybe you're in Beechworth and you've got a tattoo parlor in Beechworth. Now, you would want to, you could potentially acquire that asset as a means to advertise your brick and mortar offering to all of the people who are reading that blog on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. So there is a movement right now around the acquisition of small business. So that's probably piece number one. Piece number two relates to people starting to build an online presence to drive customer acquisition. And so that can be done through a few ways. One, your website is your best way to appeal to people who have never heard of you. And then advertising channels like Facebook and Google are your best and most cost-efficient way to get people to that website and then funnel them through to your brick and mortar offering. And so what that boils down to is audience targeting. So, for example, for Flipper, I can target people who own blogs on Facebook. Similarly, if I own a tattooing parlor, I can target people who are interested in tattooing. I can target people who have multiple tattoos. I can also target people who have multiple tattoos in Beechworth. Now, once I've targeted those people, they need to be able to land somewhere. It's less likely that they suddenly just walk down the street and into your parlor. So you're better off having some kind of website presence where they can orientate to. And so they're kind of two different reasons why having an online presence today could be very, very handy for people with a traditional small business.
Yeah, it's great, Blake. And I think Flipper, we're going to encourage people to go to flipper.com and have a really good look around because it's quite eye-opening. It's also a business that started in Melbourne and has gone global too, which shouldn't be forgotten. You talked about customer acquisition. So there's this inevitable trend where owners do have to get digital and do have to think of other ways, to capture information about their customers and to get more new customers. So does it come down to you've got to build that yourself at some cost over some time? Flipper or other similar sites, present the opportunity to go and buy something that's already built? Is it like, could you put it in those terms for somebody who's struggling with the idea of what the hell do I have to do to build an audience?
Yeah, probably just depends on what you're trying to achieve. I think the first and foremost, let's be candid. Starting a website today is very, very affordable. So jump on Shopify if you're looking to trade online. Jump on Squarespace if you're looking to just have a footprint online that people can move to and find out more about your business, the address, the phone number, a little bit about what you're servicing and what you provide. Jump on WordPress and set up a blog if you're going to write some content about the services you provide. These are all affordable platforms and products available to anyone. Now, you don't need to be too technically savvy to get any one of those up and going. But the good news is today, even if you were to find that difficult, which for some people it may be, you can outsource that work to someone very, very cost efficiently. And you can do that through platforms like Fiverr, and Elance and Odesk and other platforms like that.
Which are all platforms where you can hire in, subcontract, get a gig done at typically pretty competitive prices, yes?
That's correct. And what I would encourage people to do is find great examples. Go to your competitors. Stack rank the ones that you think are best and the ones that you think best represent what you are trying to achieve. Drop those by way of a brief onto one of these freelancing platforms and get someone to deliver that for you. It won't cost you much, but yes, there is a cost. The next step is to be able to acquire customers and move them toward that digital presence. Once you have decided that you want a website presence, you can go to your competitors' websites, see what you like there, stack rank those, and then use that to formulate a brief that you might get or pass over to someone so they can build that website presence for you. If you can't do it yourself, that is. The next step is to be able to acquire customers to that. Now, you can play around with budgets as low as $10 a day on a Facebook or Google environment to see what works for you. So you could, for example, target the keyword haircut Beechworth, for instance. Don't ask me why I keep on going back to Beechworth, but anyway, it's the example I'm using today.
There must be something about the pizzas and beers up there, Blake, I reckon.
Beechworth Brewing, I think, or brewery. Yeah. So anyway, you can then, for $10 a day, you can test out some ads. Now, you're probably not going to be amazing at optimizing your ads for that initially, but you'll learn something. You'll be able to pick up some customers. You'll figure out how much it's going to cost you to acquire those customers. And the aim is to watch how much it costs you to get that customer to your website, drop them into a form where they can either register interest for getting a haircut or hopefully even book the haircut. And then you can track how much it's cost you to acquire that customer and then offset that against the revenue that you acquire from that individual. So that's probably the next step that people would want to take.
Like you're talking about, as part of the Flipper thing is to actually using resources that are created by others and then sort of adapt those within your business framework. There's certainly some obvious opportunities in there. What are some of the risks that people might need to be considering when looking at bringing these third-party elements into their businesses? Yeah,
for one, cost. So you really need to have some sense of what you're intending to achieve with that spend and how much a customer is worth to you. So if you're selling a $50 haircut, you certainly wouldn't be wanting to pay more than $25 to acquire that customer because you're therefore losing 50% of your revenue for that customer. So that's one thing to take into consideration, cost. The second thing really is probably the cost of not doing it. So if you've got a bunch of competitors who are actively looking to acquire the same customer as you are, then you can find yourself losing out and find yourself wondering what happened to your business if other people are more savvy at doing that. Probably the other thing is that most people who are providing a small business service are very good at what they do. And an online presence gives you the opportunity to showcase that. So there's really, to answer the question of what are the threats? Well, the threat is where you don't take advantage of having an online presence. It is such a low cost of entry that you're really, really limiting your upside. Now, let's take that one step further. Let's say that you were going to acquire a small digital asset for the purpose of complementing your traditional small business. So you're finding an asset which talks about landscape gardening and has got lots of traffic for landscape gardening, and you are a landscape gardener. Well, the threat there would be that you acquire a digital asset. Maybe you've spent $15,000 on it. Maybe you've spent $500,000 on it. You would need to understand what benefit that digital asset was going to provide to you. Is it there to be self-sustaining, i.e. continue its performance in a way it has in a digital context, or is it there to support your traditional small business, in which case, how are you tracking the performance of that? So I think there are a couple of threats that people should take into consideration.
I guess one of the other things, sorry, Michael, just one of the other things I would be looking at, certainly as a business mentor and suggesting to clients, is obviously to check the reputational background of whatever asset that you're buying to ensure that you are not buying a risk that you don't necessarily need in your business.
I mean, that's pretty easy to assess too these days, right? So what you can do, at least in a flipper context, when you're looking at a content asset, because that's what you're probably most likely to buy if you are a traditional small business, what you want to be checking for is what's called domain authority. So when you look at Flipper, you can see that we've got a little SEM Rush module on the page for each of those assets. And the SEM Rush module has a score attached to it. So anything over 25 is considered high domain authority, which means that in the eyes of Google, it's a credible website getting credible traffic, and that credible traffic is there to read that content. The second thing is the breakdown of traffic that site gets. So if you're buying a content asset, it's most likely that you're interested in something that's receiving organic traffic, which means that somebody's typing in the keyword into Google or Bing or Yahoo or any other search engine, and they're landing on that site because the content is hyper relevant. Now, if it's got strong organic traffic, it basically means that you're acquiring something where people who want to read that content are reading that content. And that's one way to control the reputation management side of that risk.
We're chatting with Blake Hutchison, who's CEO of Flipper.com today. Blake, what consistently comes through in our discussion so far this morning is that digital is business. Like you refer to digital assets as real estate. I like that. Where it's no longer a separate thing. We're talking about core. Where do you find your customers? How do you cost effectively market to them, et cetera, et cetera. So I really, I think that it's on everybody to embrace the business concepts, but in a digital way. So I think underpinning what you've said is having your own digital assets, your own real estate is critically important. I think using Facebook, et cetera, to attract customers, but you want to own them on your own real estate, correct?
Yes, absolutely. You want to own them on your own real estate. Facebook is a great engagement platform, but it's not yours. You don't own it. The quicker you can get a customer from that environment into your own, the better off you'll be long term.
Yeah, and so from there, how do you, in a day-to-day sense, go about monetizing or selling to those customers when they're on your own real estate? So
I think it probably just depends on the type of business we're talking about. But again, let's say that you are a laundromat and you're operating in a country town, and you would want to make yourself known to all of the residents of that country town,
and not just assume they're going to drive by and see your shop or your outlet.
That's right. And maybe you're in a tourist town, so maybe you've got a whole heap of short-term residents there. In which case, they would want to also find out about your laundromat. Now, all good and well if you're on High Street and there's people walking past and they see you and they want to use you. But there's a couple of things. One, have people provided reviews for that laundromat, and how do you expose those reviews? Secondly, do people understand the pricing? Thirdly, do people know what your opening hours are? Now, these are all things that should be less reliant on drive-by traffic or reliant on having a digital presence. That's exactly what it's there for. Now, you could do that through a Facebook environment. You could do that through an Instagram environment. But you're far better off having a really, really beautifully designed and presented website presence, which gives people every bit of information they could possibly need. Then you use Facebook and you use Facebook audience targeting to ensure that enough people see that detail and then move across to your website presence to take on that information. Now, if it's a laundromat, it's less likely that you can commercialize that traffic you're reliant on. Is that being a brochure so that people find out the requisite information and then make their way to your small business? But it's very different if you're a restaurant, because you can easily track the performance of an advert that drives to a website and then collects the booking details of a customer who might come into your restaurant that night. And you can directly attribute that customer to the advertising effort and then the success of your website on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. So it depends on the type of business you are, but it is easy to commercialize and track the success of certain types of businesses in a small business context.
Like with the various things that are going on with COVID and the impacts of COVID on the regional communities in particular, but globally, I would imagine there's lots of businesses that are in the process of, for a variety of reasons, closing down, moving on, changing directions and things like that. Thinking of it from an exit perspective, I doubt that a lot of, probably wrong supposition, there's probably a lot of business owners out there who don't understand the value of their digital platforms and things that they currently have. How might they go about, maximising that as part of their assets, to selling that to recoup, to move on, or selling those things on?
Firstly, I think that there is actually going to be a resurgence of demand for traditional small business. The buyer base and therefore the selling opportunity expands quite dramatically as there is a resurgence of tourism and general consumer sentiment in a regional setting. I wouldn't worry too much if you own a small business. As long as you can hold on to it for long enough, if you have intent to sell, there will be a buyer for you just around the corner. I'm very confident of that. Cash is cheap right now, and so those opportunities exist. Second piece of your question is interesting, because you either have digital assets which are thriving right now, and they're thriving because of this cataclysmic shift to digital that is driving the way consumers consume most industries. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule. Any site that focuses on tourism had a bit of a tough time of it. Sites that have been reliant, less so in the last couple of months, but in the early days of COVID, sites that had been reliant on supply from China had been impacted because they couldn't get access to goods, and therefore their e-commerce business may not have been trading as healthily as it might have once done. But interestingly enough, sites that are orientated to finance, health and wellness, exercise, food, babies, things like that are having a good time of it right now. And so the selling opportunity is better than ever before. Valuations are being pushed slightly up because buyer demand is also on the increase. So what's happened is right now, you've either got people who are unemployed looking to get into the digital economy for the very first time, and you're better off buying than you are starting. The failure rate of a start is too high. You can assess the success of a business which has a trading history, so therefore it's a safer opportunity for many people. In addition to that, the sophisticated investors entering this space to buy micro assets, we've never seen anything like it. So what's happening is private equity and other sophisticated investors, and they are amassing and aggregating small digital assets. So they're no longer looking for things that are 5, 10, 50, $100 million to buy. Many of them are buying supporting businesses to bolt on to existing assets. And so you've got right now a very, very strong opportunity for digital asset owners to get a value that they wouldn't otherwise been able to get. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, excellent. We could go on for quite some time. We've got to cut it, unfortunately. Thank you so much. I just want to get you 30 seconds from you on what you'd say to encourage people to explore digital either as a side hustle or as part of their core business. Is it as simple as going to flipper.com and other sites and doing, and just becoming familiar as a first step?
So I think there's a couple of things. One, the buy-in is low. So if you've got $500 to spend, you've got $500 to spend. You can buy a $500 digital asset. If you've got $50,000 to spend, it's a different story. The asset you're buying is likely to be more mature. So yes, first think about how much you actually want to play around with, because I think that's what you're likely to be doing in your first asset purchase, and then just narrow down with the criteria. So is there a particular segment? Is there a particular location? Is there a particular vertical? Is it a content asset? Is it an e-commerce asset? Or is it a SaaS asset? It's an app. So narrow the things down, and then, as you said, start having a look around.
Yeah, so it's accessible to a lot of people. So that's what we want to encourage, not recklessness, but getting digital properly. Blake, thank you so much for your time today. Blake Hutchison from flipper.com. We'll pick you up in another conversation next year if you're up for that. Many thanks.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time. Cheers.
So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. Anthony and I continue to be inspired by bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact Anthony or myself, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on both Facebook and Instagram. Anthony and I would love you to tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.